Taewon stared at the holographic invitation floating above his desk. The symbols shifted and changed colors, showing images of crystal palaces and distant moons. He had received many official documents in his 5 years as a diplomat, but nothing like this. The message was clear. Princess Nuvara of the Valerian Empire wanted him at her wedding, not as a representative of Earth, not as part of a diplomatic mission, as a personal guest. "This doesn't make sense," Hyunwoo said from the doorway. His friend and fellow diplomat crossed his arms and frowned at the invitation. "Why would she invite you personally? Royal Valerian weddings are family affairs. They don't invite random humans." Taewon knew Hyunwoo was right to be suspicious. Humans had only joined the Galactic Council 30 years ago. Most alien species still saw them as young and unpredictable. The Valerians were one of the oldest civilizations in the galaxy. Their traditions went back thousands of years. "Maybe she remembers what happened during the trade crisis," Taewon suggested. 2 years ago, there had been a conflict between human merchants and Valerian customs officers. Things had gotten dangerous. Princess Nuvara had stepped in personally to prevent violence. Taewon had worked with her to find a peaceful solution. They had spent 3 long days negotiating, talking, and eventually laughing together when the crisis finally ended. Hyunwoo shook his head. "That was 2 years ago. She probably doesn't even remember your name." "This feels strange, Taewon. Royal weddings involve ancient rituals. Some of them are dangerous for non-Valerians." "What kind of rituals?" Taewon asked. "I don't know all of them, but I know they test the guests. They test loyalty, honesty, strength. Valerians believe a wedding brings together not just two people, but entire communities. Everyone who attends becomes part of that bond somehow." Taewon read the invitation again. The wedding would last 7 days. It would take place on Valor Prime's sacred moon, in a palace made of living crystal. Thousands of guests from across the galaxy would attend. He would be one of only a handful of humans there. "Are you going to accept?" Hyunwoo asked. Taewon thought about Princess Nuvara. He remembered her violet skin marked with silver patterns that glowed when she spoke. He remembered how her eyes changed color with her emotions, shifting from deep blue to bright amber when she was excited about an idea. She had asked him so many questions about Earth, about human music, about why humans cried when they were happy. She had seemed genuinely curious, not just polite. "Yes," Taewon said. "I'm going to accept." Hyunwoo sighed. "Then you need to study their customs. Valerian weddings are complex. If you make a mistake, you could insult the entire royal family." For the next 2 weeks, Taewon read everything he could find about Valerian wedding traditions. He learned about the Feast of Truths, where guests shared their deepest secrets. He learned about the Garden Walk, where sentient plants responded to emotional honesty. He learned about the Trial of Strength, which tested character rather than physical power. The more he read, the more nervous he became. These rituals were designed for Valerians. Their culture valued emotional transparency and spiritual connection. Humans were good at many things, but they often kept their feelings hidden. They built walls around their hearts. Hana, his security officer, helped him prepare. She was practical and direct, which Taewon appreciated. "Just be yourself," she told him. "You're good with people. You listen. That's why the princess probably invited you. Or maybe she invited me because humans are a curiosity," Taewon said, "like inviting an exotic animal to perform tricks." Hana punched his shoulder lightly. "Stop that. You helped prevent a war 2 years ago. You earned her respect. Now go accept her invitation with dignity." The journey to Valar Prime took 3 days by faster-than-light transport. Taewon spent most of the trip reviewing Valerian phrases and customs. He wanted to honor the princess properly. She had extended her hand in friendship. He would not embarrass her or humanity. As the ship approached the sacred moon, Taewon pressed his face against the viewport. The moon was smaller than Earth's, but it glowed with an inner light. Massive crystal formations covered its surface, catching and reflecting the light from the nearby star. The palace sat at the moon's north pole, a structure so beautiful it made Taewon's chest ache. "We'll be landing in 10 minutes, the pilot announced. Taewon straightened his formal diplomatic jacket. He had chosen to wear traditional Korean elements combined with the standard Earth diplomatic uniform. The embroidery on his collar showed patterns from both cultures. He hoped it showed respect without seeming like he was trying too hard. The ship landed on a platform made of smooth crystal. As Taewon stepped out, he felt the moon's strange gravity. It was lighter than Earth's, making each step feel bouncy and uncertain. He took a moment to adjust. A Valerian attendant approached. She was tall and elegant, her skin a pale blue color. "Welcome, honored guest. Please follow me to your quarters. The first ceremony begins at sunset." Taewon followed her through corridors that hummed with energy. The crystal walls seemed alive, pulsing gently with light. Other guests walked past, representing dozens of different species. He saw the insect-like Kreenar, the floating ethereals, the massive stone-skinned Gorath. Among all these beings, he felt very small and very human. His quarters were simple but beautiful. A window looked out over the crystal gardens below. Taewon stood at the window, watching the alien plants sway in the thin atmosphere. Their movements seemed almost like dancing. That's when he saw her. Princess Nuvara stood alone on a balcony several levels below. Even from this distance, Taewon recognized her. She wore a flowing gown that seemed to be made of liquid starlight. Her silver markings glowed softly in the fading light. But something was wrong. Her posture was too still, too rigid. Her eyes, which should have been bright with happiness before her wedding, looked dark and sad. She stared out at the stars with an expression Taewon had only seen once before, during the darkest moment of the trade crisis when she thought peace was impossible. She looked trapped. Taewon's hand moved to the window, as if he could reach through the crystal and ask if she was okay. But before he could move, another figure joined her on the balcony. A tall Valerian male, wearing elaborate armor decorated with gems. He spoke to Nuvara, but she didn't turn to look at him. The male's body language showed irritation. He said something sharp and walked away. Nuvara remained alone, staring at the stars. The sunset alarm chimed in Taewon's room. The first ceremony would begin soon. He needed to dress and prepare. But he couldn't stop thinking about the expression on Nuvara's face. He had come here thinking this would be a celebration. A joyful union between two people who loved each other. But that look in her eyes told a different story. As Taewon changed into his ceremonial clothes, an uncomfortable feeling settled in his stomach. Something about this wedding was wrong. He didn't know what yet. But he knew one thing with certainty. He hadn't been invited here just to celebrate. The princess needed something from him. And in 7 days, he would find out what. The Great Hall was unlike anything Taewon had ever seen. The walls were made of crystal that sang softly, creating a sound like distant bells. Thousands of guests filled the space, representing what seemed like every species in the galaxy. Taewon felt very aware that only 3 humans attended this wedding. He sat between Hana and Hyunwoo at a table near the back. The seating arrangement placed species by diplomatic importance. Humans were still new to galactic society, so they got seats far from the royal platform. Taewon didn't mind. From here, he could observe everything without being the center of attention. King Valeris entered first. He was ancient, even by Valerian standards. His skin had faded to almost white, and his silver markings were so bright they seemed to pulse with their own light. He moved slowly but with absolute authority. Every guest fell silent when he raised his hand. "We gather for the joining of 2 great houses," King Valeris announced in a voice that echoed through the crystal. "My daughter, Princess Nuvara of Velar, and Prince Theron of the Crisarian Dominion. Their union will bring peace between our peoples." So that was the groom's name? Taewon watched as Prince Theron entered from another door. He was impressive, Taewon had to admit. Tall and powerful, with the characteristic features of the Crisarian people, metallic gold skin, sharp features, and eyes that glowed red. His armor was covered in military decorations. He walked like someone who had never doubted himself in his life. Then Princess Nuvara entered, and Taewon forgot to breathe. She wore a gown that seemed to be woven from moonlight and crystal. Her silver markings traced patterns across her violet skin. Her hair, which Taewon had only seen in simple styles, was arranged in an elaborate design that incorporated small, glowing gems. She was beautiful in a way that made Taewon's heart hurt. But her eyes were the same as they had been on the balcony, dark and sad, despite the smile on her face. The first ceremony began. It was called the Feast of Truths. Each guest would be called forward in groups to drink from a ceremonial cup. While drinking, they had to share something true and vulnerable about themselves. The Valerians believed that honesty created bonds between people. Taewon watched as group after group approached the cup. Some shared stories of loss. Others shared fears or dreams. The Valerian guests seemed comfortable with this ritual. Many of the other species struggled with it. When Taewon's group was called, his hands were sweating. He walked forward with 5 other guests. The cup was passed to him. The liquid inside glowed softly and tasted like starlight and honey. Taewon of Earth, King Valeris said, reading from a list. Share your truth. Taewon hadn't planned what to say. But as he stood there, with thousands of eyes watching him, a memory surfaced. One he usually kept buried. I had a sister, he said quietly. Her name was Jiwoo. She was smarter than me, braver than me. She joined the colony mission to New Seoul. I told her not to go. I said it was too dangerous, too far from home. But she laughed and said someone had to be brave enough to reach for the stars. The hall was completely silent now. The colony failed, Taewon continued. Life support systems broke down. By the time rescue arrived, everyone was gone. I became a diplomat because I wanted to make sure human colonies would be safe in the future. But really, I think I just wanted to keep anyone else from losing their sister to the emptiness of space. When he finished, he realized his face was wet. He had cried without meaning to. Humans crying made some aliens uncomfortable, but the Valerians in the room seemed moved. Several touched their chest in what Taewon recognized as a gesture of respect. As he returned to his seat, he caught Princess Nuvara looking at him. Her eyes had shifted to a deep purple color. In Valerian emotion language, that meant empathy and connection. Later in the ceremony, Prince Theron took his turn at the cup. His truth was about winning a great battle against pirates who threatened Crisarian trade routes. It was impressive but felt more like boasting than vulnerability. He seemed proud rather than open. The first 2 days passed in a blur of ceremonies. Taewon learned traditional Valerian songs, participated in meditation circles, and attended formal dinners where the food was beautiful but sometimes impossible to identify. On the 3rd day came the garden walk. Guests were paired randomly to walk through the palace's sentient gardens. The plants in these gardens could sense emotions and respond to them. Pairs who were honest and connected would see the gardens bloom. Pairs who were false or disconnected would see the gardens wither. Taewon expected to be paired with another diplomat, or maybe one of the other humans. Instead, the random selection paired him with Princess Nuvara herself. She seemed surprised too. For a moment, something like hope flashed in her eyes before she controlled her expression. They walked together in silence at first. The garden path was made of smooth white stone that glowed under their feet. Strange alien plants grew on either side, their flowers closed and sleeping. Thank you for coming, Nuvara said finally. Her voice was softer than when she spoke publicly. I know it was a long journey. I was honored by the invitation, Taewon replied. Though I'll admit I was surprised. We only worked together once. 2 years ago. You remember it as working together, Nuvara said. I remember it as the first time someone from another species treated me like a person instead of a princess. Taewon glanced at her. What do you mean? During the trade crisis, you argued with me. You disagreed with my ideas. You made jokes when the negotiations got too tense. You talked to me about Earth music and your favorite foods. She smiled, but it was sad. Everyone else treats me like I'm made of crystal, beautiful but fragile, decorative but not real. As she spoke, the flowers around them began to open. First one, then another, then dozens. They bloomed in colors Taewon had never seen before. Blues that seemed deeper than the ocean. Purples that looked like twilight captured in petals. The plants literally leaned toward them as they walked. The gardens like you, Nuvara said, surprised. They're blooming more than I've ever seen. Maybe they like both of us, Taiwan suggested. Together. They walked for an hour, talking about everything and nothing. Nuvara asked about Earth's oceans, which fascinated her because Velar Prime had no large bodies of water. Taiwan asked about the crystal formations on her homeworld, which she described with such passion that her eyes kept shifting through different colors. When they reached the end of the garden path, it looked like a celebration had happened. Flowers bloomed everywhere. The air smelled sweet and alive. Other pairs walking the gardens hadn't triggered even a fraction of this response. King Valeris himself came to see what had caused such blooming. He looked at the flowers, then at his daughter, then at Taiwan. His expression was unreadable. Interesting, was all he said. Later, Taiwan learned that when Nuvara had walked the same path with Prince Theron earlier in the day, only a few flowers had opened. Some had actually closed, as if retreating from their presence. On the fourth day came the trial of strength. But it wasn't about physical power. Guests had to enter a chamber that showed them their deepest fears through psychic projection. The trial tested whether someone could face their truth without breaking. Many guests refused. It was optional, and admitting fear was better than entering and failing. Prince Theron refused. He said Chrysarian royalty didn't need to prove their character to anyone. Taiwan almost refused too. But he thought about Jiwoo, who had been brave enough to chase the stars. He thought about Princess Nuvara's sad eyes. And he entered the chamber. Inside, he faced visions of failure. He saw himself making a diplomatic mistake that started a war. He saw Earth isolated and alone because of his incompetence. He saw Jiwoo's face, disappointed that her brother had become small and afraid among the stars. It hurt worse than any physical pain. But Taiwan stood in that room and faced each fear. He admitted them. He let them wash over him without running away. When he emerged, he was shaking and covered in sweat. But he had completed the trial. Princess Nuvara was waiting outside the chamber. She shouldn't have been there. This wasn't a ceremony that required royal presence. You didn't have to do that, she said softly. Yes, I did, Taiwan replied. You invited me to honor your wedding. I wanted to participate fully, to show respect. She looked at him for a long moment. Taiwan, I need to tell you something. But before she could finish, attendants arrived to prepare for the evening feast. Nuvara was pulled away by her duties. She glanced back at him once, and her eyes were bright amber, the color of longing. That night, on the 5th day of the wedding, Taiwan couldn't sleep. He walked through the crystal corridors and found himself back in the gardens. Princess Nuvara was there. She turned when she heard him approach, and for a moment neither of them spoke. The garden flowers, even in darkness, bloomed softly around them. I shouldn't be here, Nuvara said. Alone with a guest. It's not proper. I can leave, Taiwan offered. Please don't. They sat together on a bench made of smooth crystal. The stars above were different from Earth stars, but they were beautiful in their strangeness. Among my people, Nuvara said quietly, there are old laws, ancient traditions. One says that when the gardens bloom for two people together, it means their hearts have recognized each other. It's considered a sign from the universe itself. Taiwan's heart began to beat faster. Nuvara, but I am a princess, she continued, and my heart is not my own to give. It belongs to my people, to duty, to this alliance that will bring peace between Valar and Chrysaria. She turned to look at him, and her eyes were filled with tears. I invited you here because I wanted to see you one more time before I gave up the right to choose. I'm sorry, that was selfish of me. Taiwan wanted to say so many things. But all he could do was sit beside her while she cried silently, her tears glowing softly in the starlight. Tomorrow would be the 6th day, the day of binding. And Taiwan realized with growing dread that something impossible and terrible was about to happen. The 6th day dawned bright and cold. Taiwan had barely slept after his conversation with Nuvara in the garden. He kept replaying her words in his mind. The gardens had shown something between them, something real and powerful. But she was a princess bound by duty, and he was just a human diplomat who had somehow fallen in love with an alien royal. Hyunwoo knocked on his door early. "You look terrible," his friend said bluntly. "What happened?" Taewon couldn't explain. How could he tell anyone that his heart was breaking for something he had never had the right to want in the first place? "Just tired," he lied. "These ceremonies are exhausting." "Well, save your energy. Today is the day of binding. It's the most important ceremony of all." Hyunwoo sat down and looked serious. "The princess will walk the crystal path in front of everyone. It's an ancient ritual. The path leads to her intended match, and she accepts him publicly. After today, the marriage becomes inevitable." Taiwan felt something cold settle in his stomach. "And there's no way to stop it?" "Why would anyone want to stop it?" Hyunwoo asked, confused. "This marriage will prevent war between two powerful empires. It's a good thing." He paused. "Right?" Taiwan didn't answer. The ceremony took place in the largest hall of the Crystal Palace. Every guest who had attended the week's festivities was present. The room was so crowded that Taiwan could barely move. He stood near the back with Hana and Hyunwoo, trying to be invisible. King Valaris stood on a raised platform, his voice amplified by the crystal walls. "We come now to the most sacred moment. The crystal path will reveal my daughter's true connection. This is not a test of politics or power. It is a test of the heart." Taewon saw Prince Theron standing on a ceremonial platform at the far end of the hall. He wore elaborate armor that gleamed in the light. He looked confident and proud, as if this were just another conquest. Then Princess Nuvara entered. She wore a dress made entirely of woven crystal fibers that caught the light and scattered it into rainbows. Her silver markings had been painted to glow even brighter. She looked like something from a dream, beautiful and untouchable. But Taewon saw her hands trembling slightly at her sides. "The crystal path," King Valaris explained to the assembled guests, "responds to genuine emotional connection. My daughter will walk, and the crystals beneath her feet will light her way to her true match. For 800 years this ritual has guided our royal marriages. The path does not lie." King Valaris gestured, and the lights in the hall dimmed. Only the crystal path remained visible, stretching from where Nuvara stood to where Prince Theron waited. "Begin," the king commanded. Nuvara took her first step. The crystal beneath her foot lit up immediately, glowing bright blue. The color of duty, Taewon had learned. The second step produced another blue crystal, then another. The path seemed to be leading exactly where everyone expected, straight toward Prince Theron. But then something changed. The fourth crystal glowed purple instead of blue, the color of joy. The fifth crystal was gold, representing discovery. The sixth was silver, meaning freedom. Murmurs spread through the crowd. These weren't the colors anyone expected. Nuvara kept walking, her face showing confusion and something that might have been hope. The crystals continued to light up in unexpected colors. Each step took her along the path, but the direction was shifting. Instead of leading straight to Prince Theron, the path was curving away. King Valaris leaned forward, his expression shocked. Prince Theron's confidence was turning into anger. The path of light led away from the ceremonial platform entirely. It curved through the crowd of guests, crystals lighting up in brilliant colors that hadn't been seen in the hall for centuries. The ancient stones were responding to something powerful, something undeniable. Taewon watched in growing disbelief as the path curved toward the section where he stood. "No," he whispered. "That's not possible." But the crystals didn't stop. They formed a line of light that led directly to where Taewon stood, among the other guests, far from any position of honor. The final crystal at Taewon's feet burst into white light so bright that people had to shield their eyes. The hall erupted into chaos. Princess Nuvara stood in the middle of the crystal path, staring at Taewon with wide eyes. Her expression showed shock, hope, and fear all at once. Prince Theron jumped down from his platform, his face twisted with rage. "This is impossible. The human has corrupted the ritual somehow. He must have used technology to trick the crystals." "That's a lie," Hana shouted, stepping forward. Taewon didn't even know about this ceremony until today. King Valeris raised his hand for silence. The hall quieted, though everyone was still whispering frantically. The king walked down from his platform and approached the crystal path. He examined the glowing stones carefully. "These crystals are ancient," he said finally. "They cannot be manipulated by technology. They respond only to genuine emotion." He looked at his daughter. "Nuvara, is this your choice?" Every eye in the hall turned to the princess. Taewon wanted to speak, to protest that this was a mistake, that he had never intended this. But his voice seemed frozen in his throat. Nuvara took a deep breath. When she spoke, her voice was steady and clear. "Father, I invoke the katana clause." Gasps echoed through the hall. Hyunwoo grabbed Taewon's arm. "What is she doing?" he hissed. King Valeris looked like he had been struck. "Daughter, that law has not been used in 800 years. "But it still exists," Nuvara said firmly. "The katana clause states that if the crystal path chooses unexpectedly, the princess may declare a trial of worth. Both the intended match and the chosen match must compete in 3 challenges. The winner earns the right to my hand." Prince Theron's anger shifted into cruel amusement. "A trial? Against a human?" He laughed. "Very well. I accept this farce. It will be entertaining to defeat him." All eyes turned to Taewon. He felt like he was drowning. This couldn't be happening. He had come here as a guest, nothing more. He had never pursued the princess. He had never imagined he had the right to care for her. Taewon started to speak, but his mouth was dry. "You can refuse," King Valeris said, not unkindly. No one would blame a human for stepping away from a Valerian royal trial. Taewon looked at Nuvara. Her eyes met his across the glowing crystal path. She wasn't demanding anything. She wasn't forcing him. But he could see the question in her expression, the fragile hope. He thought about what she had said in the garden, that he treated her like a person instead of a princess, that he had made her feel seen. He thought about the gardens blooming around them, about the crystals lighting a path to his feet, about ancient stones that couldn't lie responding to something real between them. If he refused now, he would insult her. He would make her look foolish in front of the entire galaxy. More than that, he would be abandoning her to a marriage with someone who saw her as a political tool. Taewon stepped forward onto the crystal path. The stones beneath his feet flared bright white. "I accept the trial," he said clearly. "Not because I pursued this, not because I think I deserve it, but because Princess Nuvara deserves the right to choose her own path, even if that path doesn't lead to me." The hall erupted into noise again, but King Valeris raised his hand for silence. "So be it," the king said heavily. "The trial of worth will begin tomorrow at dawn. 3 challenges will test mind, body, and spirit. Both competitors will face them. The winner will be granted the right to marry Princess Nuvara." Prince Theron smiled coldly. "I will enjoy this, human. Try not to die too quickly. It would be disappointing." As the crowd began to disperse, Hyunwoo pulled Taewon aside. "Do you have any idea what you just agreed to? These trials are designed for Valerians. Humans have never competed in a katana trial." "I know," Taewon said quietly. "You could die," Hana added, her face pale. "These aren't symbolic tests. They're real challenges that have killed competitors before." "I know," Taewon repeated. "Then why?" Hyunwoo demanded. "Why agree to this?" Taewon looked across the hall to where Nuvara stood surrounded by attendants and advisors. She glanced his way once, and her eyes were bright with unshed tears. "Because she asked," Taewon said simply, "and I couldn't say no." That night, Taewon sat alone in his quarters, trying not to think about what tomorrow would bring. He had no special powers. He wasn't stronger or faster than other species. He was just a human who happened to care about an alien princess. A soft knock came at his door. When he opened it, Nuvara stood there alone. She shouldn't have been there, but Taewon didn't care anymore about what was proper. "I'm sorry," she said immediately. "I should never have put you in this position. I was selfish. I can withdraw the challenge if you want. We can say it was a mistake." "Was it a mistake?" Taewon asked. The crystal path showing what it showed? Nuvara looked down. No, the crystals showed the truth. My truth. She met his eyes. I've been drawn to you since we first met. I told myself it was just friendship, just respect. But the gardens knew better. The crystals knew better. I care about you too, Taiwan admitted. More than I should. More than I have any right to. You have every right, Nuvara said fiercely. Hearts don't follow rules about species or status. They just feel. They stood there in the doorway, two beings from different worlds, caught in something neither of them had planned. I need to tell you something about the trials, Nuvara said finally. They're dangerous. Theron is stronger than you, faster than you. He has training you don't have. If you compete against him, the odds are not in your favor. I know, Taiwan said. But you're still going to try? Taiwan smiled sadly. I'm going to do more than try. I'm going to show the galaxy what humans do best. What's that? Nuvara asked. We adapt. We survive. And we never give up on the people we care about. Nuvara reached out and took his hand. Her skin was warm despite her alien biology. Then fight tomorrow not to win me like a prize. Fight to show them who you are. That's all I ask. After she left, Taiwan stood at his window, looking out at the stars. Tomorrow he would face trials designed to test a Valerian warrior. He had no idea if he would survive, but for the first time in his life, he understood why his sister Jiwoo had been brave enough to reach for the stars. Some things were worth the risk. Dawn came too quickly. Taiwan hadn't slept much, but he felt strangely calm. Maybe this was what soldiers felt before battle. Or maybe he was just too exhausted to be properly afraid anymore. Hana helped him dress in the ceremonial clothes required for the trial. Simple white robes that wouldn't give either competitor an advantage. Remember, she said as she adjusted his collar, you don't have to win through strength. Humans have survived on Earth by being clever. Use your brain, not your muscles. Hyun-woo entered carrying a datapad. I've been researching past katana trials all night. The good news is that none of them require you to actually fight Theron directly. The bad news is that some of the challenges have killed competitors anyway. That's encouraging, Taewon said dryly. The three of them walked to the trial arena together. It was an enormous space at the center of the Crystal Palace, open to the sky above. Thousands of spectators filled the viewing galleries. This wasn't just about a wedding anymore. This was entertainment, drama, and political chaos all mixed together. King Valaris stood on the royal platform with Princess Nuvara beside him. She wore simple robes too, as tradition required. Her eyes found Taewon in the crowd, and she gave him a small, encouraging nod. Prince Theron was already in the arena, stretching and showing off his physical prowess. He wore the same white robes as Taiwan, but somehow they looked more impressive on his tall, muscular frame. Several Chrysarian nobles cheered for him from the galleries. Competitors, approach, King Valaris commanded. Taewon walked to the center of the arena. His legs felt steady, which surprised him. Maybe his body knew something his mind didn't. The king looked at both of them gravely. The trial of worth tests three aspects: mind, body, and spirit. These are the foundations of Valerian character. You will face each challenge in turn. The competitor who performs better overall will win the right to marry my daughter. He gestured to a massive structure at one end of the arena. It looked like a giant puzzle made of floating crystal pieces that shifted and moved through space. The first challenge tests the mind. This is the Labyrinth of Stars. It is a four-dimensional puzzle that has challenged our greatest scholars. You must find the path through and reach the center. The competitor who solves it fastest wins this challenge. Taewon stared at the floating puzzle pieces. They moved through space in ways that hurt to look at. Human brains evolved to understand 3 dimensions, not 4. This was designed for Valerian perception. Prince Theron, you may begin first, King Valaris announced. Theron approached the puzzle confidently. As he stepped into it, the crystal pieces rearranged themselves into a complex maze. He pulled out a small device from his robes. That's a computational implant. Hyunwoo whispered to Taewon from the viewing area. Crisarians use them to enhance their mental processing. It's not technically against the rules. Theron worked through the puzzle with mechanical efficiency. The implant in his hand glowed as it calculated paths through the four-dimensional space. He made few mistakes, correcting quickly when he did. The puzzle pieces shifted and locked into place as he solved each section. After 47 minutes, Theron emerged from the center of the labyrinth looking barely tired. The crowd applauded politely. "Your turn, human," Theron said with a smirk, "though I don't expect you to even understand what you're looking at." Taewon stepped up to the labyrinth of stars. As he entered, the puzzle reset itself, pieces scattering into their starting chaos. He looked at the floating crystals and felt his confidence waver. This was impossible. His human brain couldn't process four-dimensional movement. But then he remembered something his sister had taught him when they were children. Ji-woo had loved music theory. She explained once how musical patterns existed in mathematics, how rhythm and melody were just numbers arranged in time. Taewon closed his eyes and listened. The crystal pieces hummed as they moved. Each one made a slightly different sound. Instead of trying to see the four-dimensional paths, he began to listen for patterns in the sound. He hummed an old Korean folk song his mother had taught him. The melody was simple, repetitive. As he hummed, he noticed that certain crystal pieces resonated with certain notes. The four-dimensional paths became musical patterns he could follow. He moved through the labyrinth slowly, feeling rather than seeing his way. When he couldn't find a path visually, he listened for the harmony. Where the crystals sang together, that was the right direction. The crowd grew quiet, watching this strange human navigate the impossible puzzle by humming folk songs. Taewon lost track of time. He was completely focused on the music, on the patterns, on the resonance between sound and space. When he finally stepped out of the center of the labyrinth, he was surprised to see everyone staring at him. 51 minutes, King Valeris announced. Prince Theron wins the first challenge. Taewon felt disappointment settle in his chest. But then the king added something unexpected. However, the judges note that the human solution revealed a mathematical pattern in the labyrinth that has never been observed in 800 years of trials. This is acknowledged. In the viewing gallery, Nuvara's eyes had shifted to bright silver, the color of wonder. The second challenge was announced immediately. A section of the arena floor opened to reveal a massive canyon beneath the palace. It was deep and dark, with strange gravity fluctuations that made objects float and fall unpredictably. Taewon could see creatures moving in the shadows below, things with too many teeth. "The chasm of endurance," King Valeris declared. "You must cross from one side to the other using only your natural abilities. No technology, no tools. This tests the body's strength and the will to survive." Theron went first again. He approached the canyon edge and jumped without hesitation. His Crisarian physiology was stronger than human, faster, more durable. He used brute force to overcome each obstacle. When creatures attacked, he fought them with his bare hands. When gravity fluctuations tried to pull him down, he grabbed onto rocks and pulled himself forward through sheer strength. He was magnificent in a brutal, powerful way. Several times Taewon thought Theron would fall, but the Crisarian prince pushed through. He emerged on the other side bloodied and injured, but victorious. 2 hours, 14 minutes, the king announced, and 17 injuries sustained. Now it was Taewon's turn. He looked at the canyon and knew he couldn't cross it the way Theron had. He wasn't strong enough to fight the creatures or powerful enough to muscle through the gravity fluctuations. But humans had survived on Earth not by being the strongest predators. They survived by being smart, adaptive, and creative. Taewon spent several minutes just observing. He watched how the creatures moved. He tracked the patterns in the gravity fluctuations. He looked for tools he could use from the environment itself. Then he began. Instead of fighting the creatures, he avoided them. He noticed they hunted by heat signatures, so he covered himself in mud from the canyon walls, cooling his skin temperature. The creatures passed right by him, confused. Instead of fighting against the gravity fluctuations, he used them. He timed his movements to let the gravity slingshot him across difficult sections. Where Theron had used strength, Taewon used physics. At one point, he came across an injured creature trapped under fallen rocks. It was one of the predators that lived in the canyon. Taewon could have left it or killed it. Instead, he spent precious time moving rocks to free it. The creature looked at him with what might have been surprise. Then it made a strange chirping sound. Other creatures emerged from the shadows, but instead of attacking, they watched Taewon carefully. When he continued across the canyon, the creatures didn't hunt him. They let him pass. He showed mercy to a predator, someone in the crowd whispered. How strange. Taewon finally emerged on the other side of the canyon. He had taken longer than Theron, 3 hours and 2 minutes, but he wasn't injured. He was tired and covered in mud, but whole. Prince Theron wins the second challenge, King Valeris announced. However, the human sustained 0 injuries and demonstrated unusual problem-solving capacity. This is acknowledged. Theron looked furious that the judges kept acknowledging Taewon's methods. 2 challenges to none, he said loudly. The third challenge is merely a formality now. But King Valeris looked serious. The third challenge is the most important. It tests the spirit, the true self. This is where character is revealed. A chamber was brought into the arena. It looked like a simple crystal box. But Taewon could feel energy radiating from it. The mirror of truth, the king explained. Both competitors will enter this chamber separately. Inside, your deepest self will be revealed. Not what you claim to be, but who you truly are. Everything you see will be projected for all to witness. There is no hiding in the mirror. Taewon felt cold fear settle in his stomach. Having his deepest self revealed to thousands of strangers felt worse than any physical danger. I will go first, Theron declared. I have nothing to hide. He entered the chamber confidently. The crystal walls became transparent, and everyone could see inside. At first, the mirror showed Theron's strengths, his military victories, his combat skills, his intelligence. The crowd murmured approvingly. But then the mirror went deeper. It showed Theron's ambition, naked and cruel. It showed him in private moments, mocking Princess Nuvara to his advisors, calling her a necessary stepping stone to greater power. It showed him planning how to use the marriage alliance to eventually dominate both Valor and Chrysaria. It showed his contempt for other species, especially humans. Weak, emotional creatures, he had called them, barely worthy of notice. The crowd's approval turned to uncomfortable silence. When Theron emerged from the mirror, his face was twisted with rage and humiliation. He had been exposed completely. Princess Nuvara's expression was cold as she watched him. Whatever small doubts she might have had were gone now. Taewon of Earth, King Valeris called. Your turn. Taewon walked to the mirror chamber on shaking legs. He stepped inside, and the crystal walls sealed behind him. The mirror wasted no time. It showed his fears first, his terror of inadequacy, of being too small in the vastness of space. It showed his grief over losing Ji-woo, the guilt he carried for not stopping her from going to the colony. It showed his loneliness among the stars, the ache of being far from Earth, from family, from everything familiar. The crowd watched in silence. Then the mirror showed something else. It showed Taewon's genuine care for Nuvara. Not as a prize or a conquest, but as a person he admired. It showed memories of him defending her reputation when other diplomats gossiped. It showed him studying Valerian poetry late at night, trying to understand her culture better. It showed him crying alone in his quarters when he thought his diplomatic assignment would end and he would never see her again. The mirror showed his belief that Nuvara deserved freedom, that she should choose her own path, that she was brilliant and capable and didn't need anyone's protection, including his. When Taewon emerged from the mirror, his face was wet with tears. He had been exposed just as completely as Theron, but what had been revealed was vulnerability instead of cruelty, honesty instead of ambition. The crowd was completely silent. Taewon turned to face Princess Nuvara and King Valeris. His voice shook, but he spoke clearly. I came here as a guest to honor you, Princess Nuvara. I entered this trial because refusing would have dishonored your choice. I have competed with everything I have. He took a deep breath. But I will not claim that victory demands you choose me. You are not a prize. You are a person who deserves to choose her own destiny, whether that's me, him, or neither of us. That's all I wanted to say. The silence stretched for what felt like forever. Then King Valeris stood. The trials are complete. Taiwan of Earth has won one challenge, achieved notable recognition in two others, and revealed a character of uncommon integrity. Prince Theron has won two challenges, but revealed character flaws that cannot be ignored. He turned to his daughter. By ancient law, the final choice is yours, Nuvara. Choose wisely. Every eye in the arena turned to the princess, and the entire galaxy held its breath. Princess Nuvara stood from her seat beside her father. The entire arena fell into absolute silence. Even the crystal walls seemed to hold their breath, their usual humming gone quiet. She walked down from the royal platform with measured steps. Her robes flowed behind her like liquid light. When she reached the arena floor, she looked first at Prince Theron. Prince Theron of Chrysaria, she said formally. Her voice carried through the arena without needing amplification. You have shown strength and efficiency in these trials. You have demonstrated the military prowess of your people. For this, you have my respect. Theron's expression began to shift toward triumph. However, Nuvara continued, and her voice became cold as ice, the mirror of truth revealed what I suspected but could not prove. You do not seek a partner. You seek a tool. You view me and my people as resources to be exploited for your own ambition. She lifted her chin. I release you from this engagement with honor. You are free to return to Chrysaria, but you will not have my hand or my heart. Theron's face turned dark with rage. You choose disgrace over alliance? Your father will not allow this insult to stand. My daughter speaks with my blessing, King Valeris said from the platform. His ancient voice was hard as stone. What the mirror revealed cannot be unseen. A marriage built on deception would bring no peace, only future conflict. You may leave, Prince Theron, or you may stay as an honored guest. But the engagement is ended. For a moment, Taiwan thought Theron might attack. The Chrysarian prince's hands clenched into fists, and his eyes glowed bright with fury. But his own advisors were pulling him back, whispering urgently. To attack would make things worse for Chrysaria. Theron spun and stalked out of the arena without another word. His attendants followed quickly, and within moments, the Chrysarian delegation was gone. Nuvara turned to face Taiwan. Her eyes had shifted to a color Taiwan had never seen before, a brilliant silver gold that seemed to glow from within. Taiwan of Earth, she said, and now her voice was soft, intimate, as if they were alone instead of standing before thousands. You have shown me what it means to choose compassion over conquest, to value partnership over possession, to remain kind even when tested beyond what seems fair. She stepped closer to him. The mirror revealed your truth, and it was beautiful. You see me not as a princess to be won, but as a person to be respected. You believe in my freedom even when it might mean losing me. Tears ran down her face, glowing softly against her violet skin. For all of these reasons, and because the crystal path showed what my heart already knew, I choose you. If you will have me. Taiwan felt like the floor had disappeared beneath his feet. He was dizzy, overwhelmed, unable to quite believe this was real. Are you sure? He managed to ask. This will cause problems, political problems. The alliance with Chrysaria will be replaced with something better, Nuvara said firmly. If you accept. Taiwan looked at her, this incredible being who had somehow chosen him out of all the galaxy. He thought about all the reasons he should say no, the political complications, the scandal, the fact that he was just a human diplomat from a young species. Then he thought about the gardens blooming around them, the crystals lighting a path to his feet, the mirror showing his truth. Yes, he said simply. I accept. I choose you too. The arena erupted. Some cheered, some shouted in outrage, some simply stood in shocked silence. But Taiwan barely heard any of it. He was too focused on Nuvara's smile, brilliant and free and full of joy. But the celebration didn't last long. Within hours, the political consequences began. The Crisarian ambassador delivered a formal protest to the Galactic Council. They claimed Valar had insulted their prince and broken a centuries-old agreement. Trade routes were threatened. Diplomatic relations were strained. King Valaris called an emergency council in his private chambers. Taiwan was summoned along with Hana, Hyunwoo, and several Valerian advisors. The king looked tired, older than Taiwan had seen him. My daughter has made her choice and I will honor it, but I cannot ignore what this means for my people. The alliance with Crisaria was meant to prevent conflict. Now we may have war instead of peace. Father, I'm sorry, Nuvara began, but the king held up his hand. Do not apologize for following your heart. That is not what I ask. He turned to Taiwan. But you, human, have disrupted the balance of power in this sector of the galaxy. If you truly care for my daughter and my people, you must help fix what your presence has broken. Taiwan's mind raced. He wasn't a military strategist or a master politician. He was just a diplomat who tried to help people understand each other. But maybe that was exactly what was needed. Your Majesty, Taiwan said slowly, an idea forming. What if the problem isn't that the alliance failed, but that we were thinking about alliances in the wrong way? Everyone looked at him. The marriage to Theron was meant to unite two powers, Valar and Crisaria. But that's a fragile kind of peace, dependent on one relationship, one political bond. What if instead we created something broader? Something that involved more than just two empires? Explain, King Valaris commanded. Taiwan glanced at Hyunwoo, who gave him an encouraging nod. Humanity is neutral in the conflicts between Valar and Crisaria. We're young, curious, and we specialize in building bridges between different cultures. What if we proposed a three-way alliance, a cultural and scientific exchange program between Earth, Valar, and Crisaria? Why would Crisaria agree to that? One of the Valerian advisors asked. They've just been insulted. Because we offer them something they want, Taiwan said. Humans have unique perspectives on technology, art, and problem-solving. We think differently than older species. We can be mediators, neutral ground. And more than that, we can help both Valar and Crisaria expand their influence without conflict. Hana spoke up. Earth would benefit too. We're still new to galactic politics. Partnerships with established powers like Valar and Crisaria would help us grow. It's a win for all three parties. King Valaris stroked his chin thoughtfully. A trilateral alliance, using Earth as a bridge between our peoples. He looked at Taiwan with new respect. You think very differently than we do, human. This approach would never have occurred to a Valerian. That's exactly why it might work, Nuvara said excitedly. Her eyes had shifted to bright amber, the color of enthusiasm. Humans bring fresh perspectives. That's what makes them valuable allies. Over the next several days, Taiwan worked almost without sleep. He drafted proposals, reached out to Earth's diplomatic corps, and carefully approached the Crisarian delegation before they could leave the system entirely. The pitch to Crisaria was delicate. Taiwan emphasized that this wasn't about replacing their broken marriage alliance, but about creating something bigger. Shared research stations, student exchange programs, joint exploration missions into uncharted space. Your prince sought power through marriage, Taiwan told the Crisarian ambassador, but real power comes from knowledge, innovation, and cooperation. Let us show the galaxy a new model. The Crisarian ambassador was skeptical at first. But when Earth's official representatives arrived and presented detailed plans, showing real commitment and resources, the tone began to shift. This would give Crisaria access to human ingenuity, the ambassador mused, and maintain our relationship with Valar without the complications of a royal marriage. Exactly, Taiwan said. Politics change, people change, but partnerships built on mutual benefit and genuine cooperation last longer than any single alliance. It took 3 weeks of intense negotiation, but finally, an agreement was reached. The Trilateral Accord was signed in the same crystal hall where Taiwan had competed in the trials. Earth, Valar, and Crisaria would share technology, culture, and resources. Humans would help mediate disputes. Research stations would be built in neutral space, staffed by all three species. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. The Galactic Council noted this new approach with interest. Several other species expressed desire to join similar arrangements with humanity. Earth, the youngest member of the galactic community, was becoming known for something unexpected: the ability to bring divided peoples together. But there was one more matter to settle. King Valeris called Taiwan to his private chambers alone. The old king studied him for a long moment. "You have prevented a war and created a new alliance model," Valeris said. "You have won my daughter's heart fairly. But there is one final test, one final choice you must make." "What is it, your majesty?" "By Valerian law, when a royal marries, they undergo the katal, the binding of life essence. It ties two people together on a fundamental level. You will feel her emotions, she will feel yours. Your lifespans become connected. If she dies, you will not long survive her." Valeris leaned forward. "It is permanent and irreversible. Are you willing to gamble your human life on a Valerian bond?" Taiwan didn't hesitate. "Yes." "You don't want time to think about it?" "I've had time," Taiwan said. "Every moment since the crystal path lit up at my feet, I've been thinking about it. I love her. If binding my life to hers is what it takes to be with her, then I accept gladly." King Valeris smiled for the first time Taiwan had ever seen. "Then you have my blessing, human. Welcome to our family." The wedding ceremony was nothing like the grand political event that had been planned originally. It was smaller, more intimate. Humans and Valerians mixed together, along with some brave Chrysarians who had decided to attend as a gesture of new friendship. Taiwan wore traditional Korean hanbok modified to incorporate Valerian elements. Nuvara wore ceremonial armor, inscribed with both their names in multiple languages, human and alien scripts intertwined. The Katal ceremony was beautiful and terrifying. Taiwan felt Nuvara's consciousness touch his own, felt her memories flood into him. He experienced her childhood among the crystal spires, her loneliness as a princess with no real friends, her dreams of exploring the stars. He felt the exact moment she had first met him and recognized something kindred. She experienced his memories too. Earth's blue oceans that Valor didn't have, his sister's laugh before she left for the colony, the terror and wonder of his first spacewalk. And the moment during the trade crisis when he first realized he was falling in love with an alien princess and thought he was going insane. When the Katal completed, they were changed. Still individuals, but connected in a way that went beyond words. Taiwan could feel Nuvara's presence in the back of his mind, warm and constant. She could feel his. "How do you feel?" she asked, her eyes shifting through colors like a sunset. "Complete," Taiwan answered honestly. "Like I found something I didn't know I was missing." 6 months later, Taiwan stood on the observation deck of a research vessel, watching a distant nebula swirl with colors Earth had no names for. The ship was part of the Trilateral Accord, staffed by humans, Valerians, and even a few Chrysarians who had volunteered. Nuvara had left her duties as a ceremonial princess to pursue her real passion, stellar archaeology. Taiwan had joined her, taking on a new role as ambassador consort, a position that had never existed before. He handled diplomatic relations while she explored ancient cosmic mysteries. "Do you regret it?" Nuvara asked, coming to stand beside him. Their hands found each other automatically now, a gesture that felt natural despite their different biologies. "You gave up a normal human life? You'll never be able to go back to just being a simple diplomat?" Taiwan thought about everything that had happened, the invitation that had changed his life, the crystal path that had revealed an impossible truth, the trials that had tested him beyond his limits, the choice that had disrupted galactic politics. "I was invited to a wedding as a guest," he said with a smile. "I left as someone who found home in the most unexpected place. I helped prevent a war. I became part of something bigger than myself. And I married the most incredible being I've ever met." He squeezed her hand gently. "No regrets. Not one." Nuvara's eyes shifted to the color that meant joy in Valerian. "The crystals knew before we did." "Maybe," Taiwan said. "Or maybe humanity's real strength is being foolish enough to believe impossible things can happen. brave enough to reach for them anyway. Then I chose well, she said, leaning her head against his shoulder in a gesture she had learned from human customs. Humanity's foolishness and all. Below them, the nebula continued its ancient dance. Behind them, in the ship's common area, humans and Valerians and Chrysarians worked together, laughed together, learned from each other. Earth had come to the stars not as conquerors or warriors, but as bridge builders and dreamers. And sometimes that made all the difference. Taiwan looked at the stars and thought about his sister Jiwoo, who had been brave enough to chase her dreams into the void. She would have liked Nuvara, he thought. She would have loved this impossible story. What are you thinking about? Nuvara asked, feeling his emotions through their bond. Family, Taiwan said. The ones we lose and the ones we find. She smiled and pulled him closer. Together they turned back to the stars, two beings from different worlds, writing a new story that the galaxy had never seen before. A human and an alien princess. A diplomat and a scientist. Two hearts that had found each other across impossible distances, proving that love, real love, could exist even among the stars. And that sometimes, the best weddings were the ones that didn't go according to plan.